drive. Tatum the finish. It is banner 18. The mission commanded is mission accomplished.
What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here with another episode of You Got Boston. Just 3 weeks away from Media Day, which is on September 29th, and six weeks away from opening night. So the summer is starting to pass. It's officially fall, and the NBA offseason is coming to its final days, which I find very exciting because I'm very much looking forward to this upcoming season. We all know at this point that there has been a ton of roster turnover for the Celtics. So when we go back to the Auerbach Center in 3 weeks, we won't be seeing Al Horford, Luke Kornet, Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis. Who else am I missing? I feel like I'm missing another key player. Well, this is one way to start the podcast. Jason Tatum, who will be injured, and I don't think will be speaking with us at Media Day. So it'll be a completely new roster, new team, a lot of change, a lot of new additions, new acquisitions, same coaching staff, same staff in general, same front office and everything. So a lot of the people that I'm used to bumping into will still be bumping into, but obviously the fabric of this team will be very different this upcoming season. And the other affiliate team, the Maine Celtics, the G League affiliate, will also have a very different roster. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about in today's episode. I do have some reporting, some sources about who these additional players are that will be playing in Maine. And then just wanted to contextualize, why does the Maine Celtics roster matter? Why do we care about the Maine Celtics? I know some of our listeners here on You Got Boston just watch the Maine Celtics as its own entity. It's a way to see Celtics players and get cheap tickets, and there's more games on nights off where the Celtics aren't playing. So I know that that's just its own draw for a lot of people. But my fascination with the Maine Celtics is that it's very much like an integral part of the organization. And you see guys like Luke Kornet, Sam Hauser, who came up through Maine and then ultimately went on to become critical rotation players for Boston that were undrafted or, late round picks. And so there is a very integrated culture between the Boston Celtics and the Maine Celtics. And that's why Joe Mazzulla is often sitting courtside at Maine Celtics games. That's why there's constant communication between the staffs. And Tyler Lashbrook, who last year was the head coach for the Maine Celtics, this year he'll be back on the sidelines in Boston. Next year, Phil Pressey is the head coach of the Maine Celtics. He was an assistant coach, player development coach the last few seasons. So they're very back and forth. They're constantly communicating. And then guys like Jordan Walsh, Baylor Shireman, they spent most of their rookie season in Maine. And so Baylor last year, he came up in March. He already knew the system. He was ready to go for the pros. And so I think Jordan and Baylor will both probably be with Boston the entire season. Jordan especially, I don't see a world where he is back in his third season in Maine, where he only played 1 or 2 games last year in the G League. But Hugo Gonzalez, their young rookie, the 28th pick from this most recent draft, I would imagine he spends some considerable time in the G League, kind of brushing up on terminology, on schemes, as developing as a player, being able to kind of get more reps than he'll be able to get in Boston. Because even though there are more opportunities for minutes, I still think it's going to be a grind for anybody to get opportunities on the court. That's a 19-year-old player, which is what Hugo is. So in this episode, wanted to talk a little bit about the young players and who we might be seeing in Maine. And so I'll just kind of rattle through these guys. And for those of you that watched Summer League basketball, for those of you that have been watching the G League, a lot of these names are going to be familiar. There are obviously 3 two-way players currently on the Celtics. That's RJ Lewis, who they acquired via trade, the trade that sent Georges Niang to Utah, as well as 2 second-round picks. They got back RJ Lewis in that trade. RJ Lewis recently was a great player at St. John's, had a tough tournament, went undrafted, and is just kind of a high-scoring guard. He hasn't been officially introduced or anything with the Celtics, but he is currently acquired. He posted on his Instagram story today his locker, at TD Garden, so he should be on the roster. In addition to RJ, there are several other two-way players that people are more familiar with. Max Shulga, who was the 57th pick, and Amari Williams, who was the 46th pick. So both of those guys, we saw a bunch of at Summer League. I thought they both showed that they're kind of sturdy, solid players. Max is a playmaking guard who can shoot, but kind of struggled to put the ball in the basket at Summer League. Amari Williams is a defensive-minded big who's a good passer who I thought looked a step slow at Summer League as well and struggled to kind of really make an impact on games. But those are their 2 second-round picks. Those are their two two-way players. I imagine that all three of those guys will spend most of the season in Maine. That is how typically it goes with two ways, but especially as a first-year two-way player that is not super promising. Like, I don't think I saw anything that made me think, okay, Max Shulga is ready to go right now. So you got those three guys. I think we're going to see Hugo in Maine quite a bit as well. But besides for that, there are 6 other guys that I wanted to talk about today. Some of these names have already been reported. Some of these names have not. So we'll kind of rattle through all of these. Some of these are more familiar names than you might expect. And before that, just a quick message from our friends over at PrizePicks, and then we'll jump into discussing all of these incoming players. PrizePicks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. PrizePicks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join millions of users and sign up today. On PrizePicks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports, combine your favorite basketball players with players from baseball, hockey, esports, and much more. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports takes into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. So the first guy that is on an Exhibit 10 contract, which means that he'll be a training camp with the Celtics, is Harper Jr., who is also the older brother of Dylan Harper, who was the number 2 overall pick for the Spurs, who actually just had thumb surgery, I believe. Harper Jr., he is a good scorer, creator, 25 years old. He shot well in college. He's kind of been an up and down 3-point shooter. He was with the Celtics last year. So he did training camp with Boston, and then he was with the Maine Celtics. And then in January, he was offered a 2-way contract by the Pistons. So obviously he took that and was with the Pistons for a bit, played mostly with their G League affiliate, and then ultimately was waived in July. So he didn't play Summer League with the Celtics, but he did play Summer League with the Celtics last year. So this is kind of like bringing back a name that is familiar with the system, who has done a Summer League stint, done some Maine Celtics stint, and now he'll be back in Maine this upcoming year. We also have Jalen Bridges, who you might recognize from the most recent Summer League roster. Jalen Bridges appeared in 4 games. He averaged 8 points on 44.4% shooting, 3 rebounds. He is 24 years old, was undrafted last year. So this is going to be his second year as a pro. And last year, he was a 2-way player with the Phoenix Suns. And he was pretty honest with us. Like at Summer League, he had some good moments. And he was pretty honest about the fact that he felt like he didn't give Phoenix a reason to re-sign him. Direct quote, he said, "I don't necessarily feel like I gave them a reason to keep me. I feel like I had a good season, but I know what I'm capable of. And I feel like I didn't play up to that. I did not live up to that." He averaged 14.3 points per game, shot 38.6% from 3. And so this is a guy, again, who went undrafted, had a 2-way contract, joined the Celtics this past summer, I should say, appeared in 4 games. Wasn't like one of their key players. Like they were prioritizing their 2-way players, their rookies. So you saw guys like, Max Shulga, Amari Williams, Hugo Gonzalez, like Miles Norris, who was a 2-way player at the time. They were more featured, but Jalen, I thought whenever he did come in, looked good. And Matt Reynolds said, he's a pro. He knows what he's doing. He was always ready to play. So he will be one of the guys that I'm not sure for sure that he'll be a training camp, but he will be on the Maine Celtics roster. And could potentially be battling for a 2-way spot as well. Obviously, that is all, there's 3 guys right now that are under contract for 2-way spots, but there's always opportunities, whether in Boston or elsewhere. So being on the G League, being in the G League, being here for training camp, like that is an opportunity to get where they ultimately want to get to, which is the NBA and kind of getting a 2-way contract. And the third guy, people might recognize his name as well from the Summer League roster, Kendall Brown. He was also really a standout from Summer League in more limited minutes, but averaged 18.6 points, 1.8 rebounds, 1 assist per game, shot 69.2% from the field. So he had a very efficient Summer League. Just a guy that I think he great in transition, kind of moves well without the ball. The thing that stood out to me is just he is so athletic. He is so explosive. 22 years old, was drafted 48th overall in 2022 after 1 season at Baylor. So He was named to the Big 12 All-Freshman team. He's had two-way contracts with the Indiana Pacers and the Brooklyn Nets. He seems like, I don't watch a ton of college, but he seems like one of those guys that maybe would have benefited from a little bit more time in college, where he was drafted out of, his freshman season. And then since then has kind of been bouncing around with multiple two-ways. I sat next to a couple of scouts for one of his games, and they said, this is a guy that most people consider to be an NBA level player that just kind of hasn't found an opportunity to break through yet. Last year with the Long Island Nets, he averaged 15.7 points per game. He shot 37.7% from three. So brings you a little bit of everything, another forward/guard perimeter player. So all three of those guys, Jalen Bridges, Kendall Brown, Harper Jr., I think are guys that you're going to see featured quite heavily in Maine, and probably all putting up nice numbers and kind of the center points of the offense in a lot of ways. So those are three guys that I think I'm expecting to potentially battle for additional minutes, additional opportunities elsewhere as well. We also have Aaron Scott, who you might remember from the final Summer League game. He didn't really play. He was on the Summer League team with the Celtics this most recent summer in Vegas, and did not really play in the first four games. I think he made like one brief appearance in the first four games. And then in the final game where, Jordan, Baylor were resting, he came in and just played with so much energy. He had 9 rebounds, 7 offensive rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, block in 18 minutes. And afterwards, he was just like, this is what I do. I come in and I play with a ton of energy. He also played at St. John's last year. So he was teammates with RJ Lewis and was just a really fun, energetic player over there as well. But that's his thing. He's a relentless crasher. He is trying to be a 3-and-D player in the NBA. That's what he told us when we spoke with him after the final game. When undrafted, before St. John's, he was at North Texas for 3 years. So I think the big question for him is, can he hit the 3-ball consistently? He said to us, I just got to knock down my threes, but the defense is there. So he's a good defender. He's a good crasher. But again, this is one of those guys that he doesn't do those things at an elite enough level that can compensate for not being able to shoot. So whether he's able to shoot in the G League will probably determine whether or not he can find a career in the NBA. But I loved watching him play. He was so high energy. And another guy that was kind of buried on the bench at Summer League, but when he did get some opportunities, immediately impacted winning. So just want to flag, I was in Vegas for 2 weeks, and when you're in Vegas that most of the guys on the roster are not going to be with the Celtics moving forward. That's just the nature of so many guys battling for really a few spots. And so the main guys that get the attention were Hugo, who was obviously the first round pick that gets a ton of interest from people, Amari Williams and Max Shulga, the 2 rookies. Jordan Walsh gets a lot of attention. The former first round pick, Baylor Shireman, also gets a lot of attention. And so I think that's 6 players. Miles Norris also was a 2-way player at the time. So those 6-7 players are really who gets most of the minutes, most of the media coverage, most of the shots, most of the opportunities. But then it's these other guys who I was watching in practice and was chatting with a little bit, and then they get some more limited opportunities here and there that are actually getting kind of, embedded into the organization anyways. And so those, Aaron Scott is another guy who was in Vegas, was with the team, could have gone to a lot of different places, but ended up choosing the Celtics. And now he's going to be battling for minutes in Maine. Another guy in that spot who really didn't play much until the final game, was also on the Celtics Summer League team, was Hayden Gray. I love Hayden Gray's game. I think I can admit this bias that I like undersized guards. I just find them exciting to watch because basketball is a tall person sport. And I think when you can see people who are undersized succeed, it's something about it is very electric to me. So Hayden Gray was the NCAA's leader in steals last year. I talked to him a little bit about that. He said that some of it was the product of the system that he played. But a lot of it is just he has great anticipation, great defender, but also a good 3-point shooter. He shot 41.8% from 3 last year. And he appeared in 2 games. I thought he had some really nice moments with the Boston Celtics at Summer League. What he said to me is, I've got good anticipation, reading the ball handler's eyes, knowing where they want to go. I take pride in defense. A lot of teams are really focusing on creating more possessions, and I think I can do that by causing turnovers and also by being a floor general, handling the ball, and setting the table for everyone. And Matt Reynolds, who was the Celtics Summer League head coach, said he's a guy that got a nose for the ball. He's a crafty player. The big thing is he's a very smart player, very savvy, and he's attacking the basketball on defense. I think he's going to have an impact wherever he goes. So he is another guy that is going to be competing for opportunities. Will also kind of help round out the Maine Celtics roster. And I liked what I saw from him in limited minutes. Again, not a guy that's going to come in and necessarily take NBA minutes right away. This is a G League player for now, but remember his name. I think that he's somebody that could potentially carve out a role just because he kind of does it on both ends and can shoot well. And I'm curious to see how that's going to translate to the NBA, but shot well in college. And then one other guy rounding out the Maine Celtics roster here is Hason Ward, who was one of the best shot blockers in the G League, returns from the Maine Celtics. So he is one of the 2 returners from last year's roster. He actually played at Summer League with the Oklahoma City Thunder, which I thought signaled was kind of the end of his tenure with the Celtics organization, but he is back with Maine next year. Last year, he was kind of their starting center, played a ton of minutes in the front court, averaged 8.4 points, 7 rebounds, and 1.9 blocks per game. This is a guy who has a 7'4" wingspan and was really highly touted as a teammate and as just a player, a person for the Maine Celtics last year. So just to kind of round out the full group here, and then I mentioned RJ Lewis, Amari Williams, Max Shulga, and Hugo Gonzalez. They're 4 rookies. I would imagine you see a lot of those guys in Maine as well. So just to kind of recap who we have here, you have 2 guys that are returning from last year's Maine Celtics team, Harper Jr. and Hason Ward. And then you have 4 players that were just on the Summer League roster, Jalen Bridges, Kendall Brown, Aaron Scott, and Hayden Gray. And so I think it just goes to show you that all these opportunities matter for your career long-term. Like you go to Summer League, it opens doors with Maine. You play when you're in Maine, you kind of stick around there. So there will be some continuity despite the fact that this team is going to be very, very different without JD Davison, who is now playing for the Houston Rockets. He did his 3 2-way contract with Boston. That's the most you can do with one organization. So his 4th and final 2-way contract is with the Houston Rockets. So he'll be over there. JD Davison, their franchise's all-time leader in points, steals, and assists, is a massive loss for the Maine program. So for people who go to Maine Celtics games, or people who live in Portland, like he is a hero over there, and he will be greatly missed. And then Drew Peterson, who played with the Maine Celtics for the last 2 seasons, will be with Charlotte. So there is a lot of turnover here, but nevertheless, a lot of familiar faces, at least to me, as somebody who's been around the team, who goes up to Maine, who was in Vegas for 2 weeks. Before I continue, and I do want to talk a little bit more about kind of the significance of the Maine Celtics, why it matters, kind of what the philosophies are. I do want to give a shout out to our friends over at Gametime. Gametime is my favorite app to purchase tickets by far. It is the best way to get tickets to NFL games, to concerts, events, anything that's coming up. I mentioned this, but this is one of my goals for the season, is to go to an NFL game. I've never been to an NFL game, never been to a Patriots game. The best parts about the Gametime app is you can see the view from the seat that you choose. You can look at the final, you can pick right now. You can look at all the options, for example, at a Patriots game, and you can click on the seat that you want, and then you will be able to see what is the view of the field from that spot. Makes a huge difference. You also have the lowest price guarantee. So Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if you find a cheaper price elsewhere. There is full ticket coverage. There are all sorts of deals. And so it's really just a great way to buy tickets, great gift. It's my go-to gift for friends, families, to buy them Celtics tickets or concert tickets or whatever else. It's better than just a gift that you can, a material gift. This is an experience gift. So use code CLNS, take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code CLNS for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go download the Gametime app today. So I think right now, it's interesting to have the mix that they do have. It's a little bit of a new era in Celtics basketball, where for a long time we have the same young guys who were kind of battling under the surface for opportunities. And then when these opportunities opened up, like I thought JD Davison might just come in and play for the Boston Celtics. Now that Drew Holiday is gone, now that you need a little bit more guard depth, but it's clearly they didn't view him as part of their long-term future because they did waive him when a 2-way opportunity opened up for him elsewhere. So which of these guys is going to ultimately kind of break through? The reality is, when you're following the Maine Celtics, when you're following the G League, like most of these guys are not going to be players for Boston. Most of these guys are not going to be NBA players. but the next Sam Hauser is always kind of right below the surface. And obviously Sam Hauser is a guy that, played good defense in the NBA finals and shot 50% from three in that series. And so players like him matter. And I would say beyond that, and I wrote a story about this last year, what matters is having like a full, top to bottom program, starting with, the Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown and Joe Mazzulla and Brad Stevens, all the way down to the assistant coaches in the G League and to the guys that don't play in the G League, because they all serve kind of the same purpose. And if Baylor Scheierman, wasn't effectively prepared for Boston last year, like if the G League stint had not been effective, like maybe he's not ready to play next year, or maybe he is going to become a 10-point per game guy. And a lot of the success is going to have to be credited towards his tenure in Maine. So to me, it's all very connected. That's why I go to Summer League for 2 weeks. That's why I go up to Maine whenever there's a free game where the Celtics aren't playing, because it's all one system. You're going to see Phil Pressey this year be the head coach for the first time. Phil Pressey's a guy who played a Maine Celtics game as a player back in the day when they were Red Claws. He's a guy who played for the Boston Celtics, was a coach. So it's all, kind of in the family for him. He wants to be a head coach one day. And I think this is a perfect opportunity for him to be in that seat. And then obviously you're going to see probably the most important thing that the Maine Celtics can accomplish this year is preparing Hugo for an NBA career, because ultimately the Celtics picked him 28th because they believe in him. They believe in his potential as a player. They want to see him become a rotational NBA player in the coming years. And so Maine is going to be the vehicle through which he's going to get there. So I'm looking forward to seeing how Hugo looks in Maine. I think he's going to spend considerable time there early on as he kind of gets his bearings. And who's going to be playing alongside him? Probably you're going to see Max Shulga starting at the point alongside Hugo in the backcourt. You're probably going to see Amari Williams at center. You're probably going to see RJ Lewis be one of their kind of go-to scorers. So that leaves you with one starting spot besides for the two-way guys in Hugo. Maybe that goes to Ron Harper Jr., who has kind of served his time with his organization. Maybe that's Jalen Bridges or Kendall Brown. We'll see how that kind of shapes up there, but certainly there will be some battles for opportunities. A lot of these guys will be at training camp. So there will be some opportunities for them to kind of show how they can impact winning there as well. So very much looking forward to kind of seeing what these new faces bring. It further reinforces to me why it's important to go to Summer League, because a lot of these guys do end up sticking with the organization, and whether you end up becoming a guy who signs a two-way player and eventually signs a $40 million extension like Sam Hauser or like Luke Cornett, who stuck with the organization for years. So I would have loved to be able to say signed a $40 million extension, but Luke is no longer with the Celtics, obviously. But all of this kind of matters, and it's all interconnected. So that is my reporting. You can read my full story on Celtics blog, where I break down, if you're more of a visual learner, you can read about all these players that will be with Boston, will be with Maine next season. Again, we are 3 weeks to training camp beginning, media day, where we'll hear from all the players. We'll hear from Joe, and we'll start to get a sense of like how they're talking, how they're forecasting the season to be. I've mentioned this, but every conversation I've had with a player this offseason, they have been very confident in where they go from here. They've been very confident that this team is kind of being slept on, that they're going to show that they are better than people expect. So you can check out all of our coverage over at CLNS Media. I have recent podcast episodes with an interview with Hayden Pritchard, discussing Nemias Keita in Portugal. He was awesome at Eurobasket. Have an episode on You Got Boston about that you can check out. And then also one of my favorite interviews that I've done was with Jeff Twist, the longest tenured Celtics employee, the last remaining Red Auerbach hire, who kind of discusses 45 years with the Celtics. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame this weekend. So check out all of those You Got Boston episodes. Check out the Big Three podcast. We have plenty of content over at CLNS. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications for CLNS Media so you can join us when we go live, whenever news breaks, whenever there's new information. I don't know if there's going to be more transactions, before the season starts. Obviously, Anthony Simons remains on the roster. That's the big question for me, is whether he gets traded last minute here or not. But regardless, it'll be an exciting season. I'm sure we'll have plenty more to come before the season officially begins. So as always, thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this Maine Celtics roundup. I know it's a little bit different than the usual Celtics content, but I did want to share that reporting with all of you. Thanks again for watching, and enjoy the rest of your week.